Hey, and welcome everybody to episode 2 of the Bad Mage Podcast. I'm Chris Medina, and with me, as always, is Michael Conroe. How are you doing today, Michael?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm excited that we actually got some kind of hard data came out for once, and we can talk about that today.
That's true. Yeah, that's good. Quantifiable data. That's awesome. So, in today's episode, as Michael hinted at, we're going to be speaking to some actual numbers gathered in a variety of different ways and some opinions on the meta in terms of which decks are good. So, that's the meta portion of the episode, and we're also going to be referencing the patch notes and talking about our thoughts on that. We have some tournament results that we can talk about, and yeah, that's what we're going to cover today.
Sounds good. Let's get right into it.
All right, so first things first, let's talk about the patch notes. So here you can see the Legends of Runeterra open beta website and the patch notes. I'm sure you read through these, Michael. We can go through kind of bit by bit and talk about what we think, right? So they introduced the cadence here, which is pretty interesting, and it's very similar to what they did with TFT, where they kind of had small and then big patches.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely on the smaller side, right?
Yes, yeah, very, very small. A lot of cosmetics, a lot of nothing really big, which was understandable for the first patch. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Guardians. I haven't gotten it yet because I honestly keep forgetting, but I plan on getting the new Gloomtooth Guardian as my for replacement of choice. So Shadow Isles represent.
Shadow Isles, okay. So the developers have notes. They said, since this is LOR's first live patch, we'd like to provide some overall info on what you can expect in terms of designations, cadence, etc. Now, I thought this was really cool. I know it's not that interesting objectively, but I think that when a company lets you know upfront what their cadence plans to be, you can wrap your expectations around that, and I think that's a pretty good move.
Yeah, it's a good move until it's not, right? Like if they ever like fall off of this cadence, then people get annoyed. But I agree, if everything works out, this is good. I like that they're communicating openly and early. So.
Have they fallen off their scheduled?
I don't think Riot has. There's no
Okay.
other companies that make card games that might do.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know Riot is a small indie company, so I don't know if we should, hold them to their word, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's their first rodeo, so.
So they talk about briefly their naming convention on how they're going to name their patches, which isn't a big deal, but it's good for us to know. We can skip through that. They briefly talk about the XP systems. While there are no associated changes in this patch, we're keeping an eye on how y'all are engaging with the XP changes introduced with open beta. I think they mention how they don't like the system that they've created where they're encouraging users to kind of just auto-concede to AI, which makes sense, and they're going to be looking to kind of fix that.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I like that you can do your quests against AI. Like some of their quests are a little specific, or I didn't always have the deck to do them, but it's like pretty free to play them against the AI and do your quests quickly. But I do agree, like the way their XP system works is if you're maximizing your XP gain every day, you're supposed to both beat and lose to the AI a certain number of times, and they probably don't want people spending their time that way, realistically.
Have you been doing that?
No, because I spent money and I don't need to grind out 200 XP points by conceding 8 games to the AI. But there might be people out there, that really want to get through the region tracks.
That's fair, and I guess that's something to consider. I also have not been doing that. I mean, I'm definitely not maximizing my XP games, and I almost have. I mean, we look at our collections pretty constantly to see where we're at, and I don't think I have a want for anything other than maybe four champions, which I can craft next week between my expedition rewards and champion wildcards. But that is largely in part because I've been buying 3 champion wildcards or maxing out the wildcards available in the store each week. So maybe I'd have a different perspective if that's not what I was doing.
I think that's the biggest thing is I think about we've had 3 stores at this point, right? And so like you've had 9 champions that you wanted to craft that someone who's free to play might not have had. So
fair enough, yeah. So this would be a good change in theory. They haven't really specified exactly what they're going to change. They just said that they're keeping their eye on it and that they don't want to condone that behavior. So they're looking at potential adjustments. Yeah, they haven't clarified what they plan on doing.
Yeah, it makes sense. They want you to be playing their game to have fun, not to do your like chores, as they said.
So this was interesting. It's a potentially good change to come, but I think it's kind of awkward to mention in the patch notes because they haven't actually changed anything. So it's an interesting note to have in the patch notes, and I guess that's why it's under the section called Dev Notes. They're just notes. So it's good that they're being open, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree it's a little weird, but I'm all for as much communication as possible.
Sure. All right, moving right along. Boards and Guardians. So 3 new Guardians have arrived in Runeterra, and Boards and Guardians can now be purchased in the store. It was very difficult.
That was a good change.
Yeah, that's a positive. It was very difficult to find and purchase them, and now they're easy to figure out, right? So that's a good change.
Yeah. Another good change. Superior Guardian now purchasable.
Which one of the 3 of the Superior Guardian?
I mean, let's put it this way: how often do you play against Noxus and or Demacia on ladder? It's a lot less than Shadow Isles.
All right. Yeah, I mean, they look cute. It is what it is. It's a cosmetic change. I'm all for it. I kind of want... I'm more excited for boards. Obviously, there's more going on, more particle effects. The Guardians are cute. I'm happy for it. That's great.
I mean, these are all common tier Guardians. I feel like we're going to see some real sweet legendary Guardians with some particles at some point.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm very excited about the cosmetic aspect of the game, and we talked about it in last week's podcast. The game is gorgeous. They've done a good job with the look and feel, and hopefully they continue to do that and expand through Guardians, through boards, in addition to exciting animations when cards are played.
Yeah, I mean, they did say, or they've talked about in articles, they actually want cosmetics to be their main source of income in this game, so...
It has to be. There's just no other way to spend real amounts of money.
Right, by choice. And so,
yeah.
I mean, I think, like, I played League from the beginning, and I expect the quality to just continue to go up. Like, the skins these days are insane in quality compared to when the game came out.
Sure.
I think that'll happen in Runeterra. We're going to start seeing, like, the crazy boards to the point where you're not even playing the game correctly because you're just looking at your sweet board. And it's like maybe too much going on,
Fair enough, yeah. This one is a little more practical, a little more real in terms of what I expect from patches, right? Fixing things, changing things. Miscellaneous. So animation speeds increase with Whirling Death and Yasuo stun/recall damage. How do you feel about this specifically?
I think it's good. I don't think we want to get into a Hearthstone situation where, like with Patron Warrior, you could only play the deck if your APM was like really high, which is a weird card game mechanic.
Right.
I want to nominate Draven's Spinning Axe as the next like animation speed up.
I agree with that. Yeah. So Whirling Death, maybe I didn't play it enough. I definitely played it after the patch because I started experimenting with the Noxus deck, but
right.
I wasn't aware that was something to be concerned about.
It was pretty slow.
Okay, fair enough.
I played it, yeah.
I will say Yasuo stun and recall damage, that is something that needed to be... As a Yasuo player, I recognize when you Intimidating Roar on a board that is full, it can take quite some time. The animation just going and going and going, every single individual unit on your opponent's board, it takes quite a bit to resolve. So that one I am definitely grateful for.
Yeah, we actually we had opposite experiences here. I don't think I've ever really played with Yasuo. I didn't know it was a problem.
I wouldn't say it was problematic. I mean, I played a lot of Yasuo. I don't remember the timing out. I don't remember it becoming an issue, but you did have to wait a while before the resolution. So That is what it is. Also under miscellaneous, we have new installs of LOR now have smaller initial size, so new players can start playing faster. Post-game tutorials or post-tutorial game content will download as soon as you play through tutorials instead of all before. That makes sense. That's just an efficient way to handle your client and the client server model from a technological standpoint.
Yeah.
Nothing too big to talk on there. Now, bug fixes. Some of these were super relevant, and I'm glad that they addressed them very quickly. So purchasing cards with shards or wild cards now correctly updates your display total remaining. That was one of the biggest issues for me.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that they fixed that, because not being able to take an accurate assessment of your wild cards when you were building multiple decks in one sitting, it was pretty problematic. It was also, I think they said, shards and wild cards. So I would dip into shards, and it got more confusing with shards. The wild cards were small enough in quantity that it's easy to keep track of. But when you're dealing with 9,000 shards and you're eating away in multiples of 300, 1,200 for rares and epics, it's not as easy. Yeah. So that, 2 thumbs up there. I'm pretty excited. The next item is fix an issue where players weren't correctly receiving cards after purchasing them with wild cards. I don't think that ever happened to me.
Didn't happen to me, but I have seen people complain about it on Reddit, so I know it was a real thing.
Fair enough. Good stuff. Various fixes for minor social panel issues, delays, unresolvable notifications. That was an inconvenience. Yeah. I did experience that, so that's good.
Yeah.
Used cast salesman now shows an expedition archetype. So there was just a card apparently that wasn't in expedition buckets.
Yeah, I wish we could go back to that. The card's not great.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware. I don't play expedition nearly as much as some other people. I don't know if that affected expedition. Is there now a new archetype that's playable because cast salesman exists? I'm not sure.
I doubt it. I don't know. Piltover and Zon is not my go-to expedition faction though, so maybe. Yeah,
that's the 0 mana or 1 mana 0 power that when it dies it deals the damage to both Nexus.
That is the token. There's a standalone card that does that. This is a card that summons 2 of those. It's like a 3/2 for 3 or 4, probably 4. It makes 2 of those when he comes in.
Okay. Yeah, well, if you love expedition, maybe that excites you. Good stuff. Really Either way, it's good to know that there was a card that didn't exist and now they've addressed it.
Yeah.
Anivia now correctly appears in 2 expedition archetypes rather than 3. So this is also interesting because I'm aware of a lot of people actually who said that Anivia would just pop up for them and they would pick it sometimes and it didn't really synergize with their decks and it was an odd space to be. That makes sense. It was in higher frequency than it should have been.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably an overall nerf. I think Anivia is actually one of the better for all your champions in Expedition.
Personally. Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, overall nerf, I'll accept that, but I mean it was a bug. It wasn't working correctly.
Yeah, it's not like
yeah.
It's I mean maybe the nerf's the wrong word, but for all you Freljord lovers, you will see less Anivias. Probably bad for your win rate.
All right, reduce volume on the box and threshes the box. I don't often play with sound, but I imagine a lot of people do, so this is good for them. I don't know if it was ear bleeding. I don't know how loud it was. Okay, yeah.
Someone's played the box. Okay, that's a good fix.
Sure. T-Hex leg rotation fixed in celebration animation. I know there's a couple.
The most important note on the whole patch is there.
The leg, that's the one, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you played a lot of Ezreal Heimerdinger control, right? So you probably saw that a lot more than a lot of people.
This is the Guardian. This is nothing to do with Dex. This is people
pay
good money for the TX Guardian.
Oh.
The guy's leg needs to rotate when they're popping off on people.
Okay, so future note, if anybody from Runeterra is listening, I feel like this should have specified Guardian. I had no clue with it. I thought this was referencing the 8 mana turret that you get from, or 7 mana turret, whatever the big turret is in the Ezreal Heimerdinger deck that's procedurally generated off of Heimerdinger. So future reference, if anybody from Riot, specifically Runeterra, is listening, clarification here on this bug fix would have been appreciated.
A special one that's this important.
Sure, the most important, according to Michael. Important. All right, improved resolution of T-Hex and Poro collection images. So now this is also referencing the.
Yes, but this is like, I think it's in the store. I actually don't know 100% on that one.
Okay, we'll do some research. I don't think either of us know what this is in reference to.
Research on that.
Okay. No research. Okay.
If you know, then you know. All right. Yeah. That's what I'm going with on that bug fix.
You gotta be in the know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the patch notes. It's good. It's a first patch, so keep them coming, and hopefully the future will be more excited. I think they announced their big one is coming pretty soon, like 1 week from now, maybe.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited to see what's going on there. If it's just going to be a series of balance changes, if they're going to be adding some kind of new content, if they're going to be, who knows? I'm excited to see some cards fundamentally change, right? Like completely redesign. I know that's not a thing that typically happens in card games.
There's some cards going back to math class.
Yeah, some cards.
2 week periods. Yeah, some cards.
Yeah, some cards. That it might. He might be a commander somehow. I don't know how he ascended without a college degree, but Commander Lidros, I'm looking at you, buddy. You need to go back to math class, basic arithmetic.
Class. Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way because that's annoying. All right. So next we're going to talk about the meta. So we have some data, like we said earlier, and some opinions from some pros. So we're going to start by looking at some Mobalytics data that was put on the subreddit by the user Uthgar.
Yep.
So let me transition into here, and then Michael, I think you kind of analyzed the data a little more than I have. I was aware that this existed. So what is it telling us? What is the data telling us? What are your opinions on it? How does it look? What's happening right now?
Yeah, so I'm not going to claim to have done a full deep dive onto it. I filtered by decks that are being played at least 1,000 games in that data set, and then kind of looked at what was doing well at that point.
Now you filtered that through the spreadsheets that they made available?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not a feature on the website that's live right now?
No, so I think it will be, and you can kind of find their summarized table on the Mobalytics website. They have it in tier list form, so that doesn't have the stats, but it's kind of their conclusions drawn from the data, I believe, and it'll get more in depth over time. But I was just curious to look at some of the percentages on my own.
Okay.
From what I saw, I can kind of see why people have complaints about elusives, regardless of my own opinion on them at this point. They have very high win rates kind of across the board, and they released a disclaimer. This is only, like, this is not Riot's data, this is data from people using their deck trackers, right? So the ELO that these games are played in aren't explicitly stated, but my guess is they probably reflect the average ELO that people are. So I'd say it's probably going to be more lower ELO on average, right? Because not everyone that's using their deck trackers in Masters. There's like 50 people at this point or something. But yeah, elusives are doing very well in a variety of shells. I believe the Demacia elusive deck was their highest, and followed that were the more aggressive versions of Elise decks, like the Noxus versions, kind of like the complete with Brothers Bond and Darius's.
So the spider shells with Noxus.
Yeah, like the spider shells more than like the Shadow Isles mid-range decks with Mist Wraiths and stuff.
Okay.
The actual spiders decks.
So here I'm looking at their website, and it has their tier ranking, right? S and A.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know, at least based on the data I saw, this wasn't necessarily completely like win percentage driven, because
Mm.
I don't believe that Ionian Wraith Callers was on top, even though I do believe it is the best deck. And I think they said this tier list is influenced by talking to some of their content creators like Swim, who like consults on these things. So this is probably a combination of here's the data and like what do we actually think, you know?
Okay.
But yeah, I would say elusives definitely are winning. Spiders are winning. Teemo is not winning. That is the one thing that stood out to me. There is a Piltover Ionia Teemo deck that had over 1,500 games, which is pretty large, and it had a 5% win rate. So if you were playing that deck and winning, you need to download Deck Tracker because it looks embarrassing right now.
So, and you might not know the answer to this. There's a lot behind the scenes, I guess,
Yeah.
that we aren't aware of. But how does Deck Tracker account for the discrepancies? So, if you and I are both playing Ionia Wraith Callers, what is the maximum amount of cards before it's no longer considered Ionia Wraith Callers?
So the answer is I don't know. I know on the spreadsheet it was only showing me the 8 most popular cards in that archetype, and they were grouped by it seemed like region pairing combined with like similar cards, but I don't know if behind the scenes that actually goes deeper or not.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you're playing 3 of 8 popular cards, it's 24. It's over 50% of your deck. So the presumption here, based off what you said, which we don't know, is that the shells are dictating the archetypes more so than the totality of the actual deck list.
It's either that or they're accounting for more data but not explicitly showing it on that spreadsheet. Like, I don't know which it is between those two.
Okay. So it is advisable to look at the Excel spreadsheets provided by the user Uthgar on the subreddit, and we'll post a link to that post in the description below. Because, like Michael said, you don't really have... It doesn't say what the win rate and game played is in this tier list. It just has what they believe, which is probably a subjective opinion derived from analytical data, which is completely fine. It's still a good pulse on what the meta looks like based off of their information aggregated with their proprietary deck tracker. But if you're looking for something a little more refined, you're still unfortunately going to be leveraging data aggregated by their proprietary deck tracker, but you can sort specifically by win rate and games played, which in my opinion is probably a little more productive into achieving a higher rank than just grabbing one of these 3 S tier lists and jamming games with those. You're probably safe either way. That's just my opinion. I would sort by win rate and games played.
Yeah, it's teach their own. I imagine it's a lot easier to just come here and see this is an S tier and copy the list. But if you're truly a go-getter and kind of want to look at the data and which cards are performing well and which shells, then it's good that the info's out there, if nothing else.
Yeah. So if you are... We'll just go over this list here in case somebody is listening to the audio transcript and can't see the screen that we're sharing. For S tier, we have Ionian Wraith Callers. Now, this is the... I'm sure you've seen it on ladder if you've played a ranked game. This is the Elise Hecarim Spider deck splashing Ionia for Shadow Assassin and Deny.
Yeah, I think outside of maybe 3 cards, everyone's on like the same 37 out of 40. Like the only spot I ever see change is the Withering Whales.
Yeah, I should also emphasize in my description, I didn't mention Wraith Callers, which is the deck's namesake.
I like to call it Mist Wraiths, because there's 6 Mist Wraiths technically and only 3 Wraith Callers.
Yeah, I don't agree with the names here, but that's a conversation for... I don't know who created these names. I mean, it's their platform, right? So they just gave it a name.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of power, actually.
Mist Wraith, so.
I like the power leverage there. Like, if I worked for Mobalytics, I could call these decks whatever I wanted with approval. Or somebody is saying, okay, this is called this.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people are only on like 34 out of 40. Like sometimes people change the champions. Like Thresh floats in and out these days, but this shell, like if you went to this website and looked at this, you can like this is literally the stock list. Like,
Yes.
people don't change that much.
Yeah, I will also say in my experience, and you have a lot more experience actually playing the deck, but in my experience against playing against it, what I noticed is that there's still 6 champions, and there's still a combination of Elise and Hecarims, but usually it's not 3 Hecarims on ladder. It's like 2 Hecarims, and then a Thresh or insert a third champion, right? It's something different. Now, I'm not sure if it's because people's collections aren't refined enough to have 3 Hecarims, and they're substituting playable cards that are fine, or if they actually have played games and are saying, this one of is what I need.
I mean, I can tell you in my own experience and kind of like just like perusing Reddit, I think a lot of it's like, okay, well, I don't have a Hecarim, like I'm gonna try this card, and that card like does well in a game or two, and they're like, yeah, like that. Now it's a choice. Like in the beginning, but this is a tech choice.
Yeah, I'm choosing to play Rekindler here.
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
guess.
I mean, here's the thing: you never want to draw 2 Hecarims. You want to draw 1 Hecarim and 1 Rekindler.
Sure.
It's a choice.
Okay, all right. Next we have Dawn Spiders, which is a deck that I personally dislike very much. I'm not sure why I dislike it. I don't lose to it very often. I guess I don't like playing it. It seems unexciting to me to play it. So interestingly enough, this is a Wraithcaller Dawn Spiders deck, which looks actually newer than what I'm used to when I'm thinking Dawn Spiders in my head.
Yeah, I think Dawn Spiders at this point is more of a holdover name from the original list. I mean, it still plays Dawn Speakers, right? But it's when I first started seeing this deck pop up, it was a variant on Mist Wraiths that decided Demacia was better in the mirror than Ionia is, which I can see. Like usually when you're playing mirrors, I found Dawn Speakers is very powerful because you have the same cards, then yours end up getting bigger, right? I will say the one thing I do not like about this list, and I'm looking at it, is it's really hard to convince me to play an Allegiance list with 11 cards from another region. I've been playing the stock list with 5 cards. I haven't missed on Wraithcaller yet, and I know as soon as I do miss, I am going to be extremely annoyed. And I feel like this list just has to miss way more statistically, right? It's over double the amount of non-Allegiance cards.
Yeah, so I'll say this. So for those of you who aren't aware, this list is, Elise, Hecarim, Thresh, a bunch of Demacia cards in back-to-back, right? The good stuff, Dawn Speakers.
Redeemers. Shadow of Demacia decks always.
Yeah.
I see some people play Radiant Guardians. The list on their website's not right now. It's like when I think to kind of conceptualize this list, you have to realize it's like Wraithcallers or Mist Wraiths, whatever you want to call it, is a very true mid-rangey list. Like it can feel aggressive because Elise exists and like Arachnoid Horror, but they don't play any 1-drops. Like this is not necessarily an aggro deck, and so people started kind of, the more over the top you go in these mid-range mirrors, normally the better you are. And Purify is one of the better answers to Ladros in the mirror. It's kind of the only way to actually end the Ladros war favorably for the most part.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think back-to-back is probably better than Deny in the mirror. It's kind of a... I feel the same way about back-to-back as I do with Dawn Speakers. When we're playing the same set of creatures, +3/+3 just means I'm killing 2 of your creatures in combat because our creatures are always identical.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, that makes sense.
This list has merits. I do have problems with it. I'm surprised to see it so high. I do not play against this deck very often.
So this is what I was gonna say actually. You kind of led this segment by saying, yeah, Elusive is performing well, which is probably true. I haven't poured through the data in the spreadsheets yet, but what I'm noticing here is they have 3 decks in their S tier,
Mhm.
And 2 of these 3 decks are not elusive decks. So I feel like there was some negative elusive propaganda thrown at the very beginning of this segment, but I'm going to leave it there because we are going to segue into what is affectionately called elusive burn, which I don't like the name.
That's because they want to burn all the elusive cards, so they're not in the game. I think I figured it out.
Yeah.
Because
So
there's no burn spells. It's just, please delete this, Riot.
So this is a deck that I've played with some great success. This is the elusive shell, right? So you have your Greenglade duos, your conspirators, your shadow assassins, your life blades. This deck is playing a single solitary monk, and then just a bunch of good Demacia stuff, right? Standalone, back to back, Fleet Feather, Dawn Speakers as well. I will say when I played
championless one,
yes,
for context.
Yes, the championless one. There are variants that play Fiora.
Mm.
But this, yeah, exactly, yeah. I'll say I had a hard time turning Dawn Speakers on when I played this deck. I did play it, like I said, with some success. But yeah, I had a hard time turning Dawn Speakers on. And the list that I played only played 2 Dawn Speakers, and when I drew them, I couldn't turn them on. It's not that I didn't draw it. I didn't. They weren't effectively. I mean, this is an evasive meta, in my opinion. You're either fearing over your opponent, or you can't block in elusive, or overwhelm makes blocking inconsequential.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you're playing a deck that wants to be elusive. I don't know. Maybe it was just maybe it was small sample size. I didn't play that many games with it, and I did do a lot.
I think you're right. I think this kind of goes back to what I was talking about on why the Dawn Spiders deck is theoretically favored. This Dawn Speaker's elusive deck, from what I've gathered and kind of when I've played it and against it, it popped up at the height of kind of the elusive craze when everyone was playing these decks. And Dawn Speakers is really good, and in my opinion, kind of only good in the elusive mirrors, because elusive, like, you're never trading unless you're playing the elusive mirror, right? Like, or very rarely, I guess I should say. I feel like a lot of times they're just like, all right, you're gonna hit me for what you can. Like, I'm gonna hit you. Maybe you chump block with my Inspiring Mentor at some point.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like, Dawn Speakers let you win the elusive mirrors because, again, you're playing the same creatures, but now yours are getting bigger and things are trading.
That makes sense.
Now, in my opinion, we're more of a Shadow Isles meta currently, like in the last couple days. I think I would want to be cutting the Dawn Speakers either completely or play like one at most and look for some cards that are kind of better in the Shadow Isles matchup, because you're just not trading that much. You know, they can't block your guys. It's hard for you to block their guys, so it's a very non-interactive combat game both ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. So job well done to Mobalytics. There's general info, how to play strategies. There's probably some sample size somewhere on their website, some sample opening hands, deck list, cost, and dust, right? So good job to them. They also have the A tier lists, and some B tier lists. They are, for the most part, derivative of S tier. You have more spider-based aggro decks, but the Noxian ones, which I prefer personally more. You know, you're overwhelming your opponents with Darius, crowd favorite. You're playing Might. There's some more elusive decks.
The Ionia one, or the Freljord one specifically, sorry. Which is actually my personal pick for the elusive deck I would currently play for whatever little that's worth.
This is the one that I played with the highest success. So between this and Noxious Spiders, I managed to break into Plat after a couple games, and I'm still playing those 2 decks alternating and, you know, moving towards Diamond. So I personally found a lot of success with this version of elusives.
Yeah, I think your conspirators are better in this version, with Omen Hawk and Mentor being 2 cards I really am okay with picking up on turn 2. I am really low on Braum right now. Like, I know they still have it in this list, and this is a list where it should be good in theory because you have a lot of hand buffs and deck buffs, but just in general, I'm not high on that champion in this, with so many fearsome creatures going around.
Well, with 3 take hearts, it might be a little better. I've
It is, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
let's just say, like, this list is clearly supporting it. I found it still ends up being a little slow sometimes, but that might just be my experiences.
Fair enough. Fair
I
enough.
do think a River Shaper Fiora deck is kind of different than anything in the S tier.
Yes, yes. The River Shaper Fjord deck. So I've played this deck as well. I love Ionia, Demacia. I love Fiora. I love Elusive. So I've definitely played this deck.
Yeah.
I love the card River Shaper. It's a lot of card advantage. I like it. I also got a lot of wins off of Judgment and Fiora against the spider based decks because they can't really do anything about it if played correctly. You know, if you don't give them a priority window to be able to Black Spear something to eat your barrier, right? There's a lot of times where you just win games that you don't have any right winning. You're losing the game very terribly, and you top deck a Judgment, or you draw the Fiora because you didn't have the Judgment, and then you just kind of run away with the game. When you know, it doesn't feel good for the opponent. That's for sure.
I'm actually confused. You said top deck with Fiora. I've actually never played against a Fiora deck that didn't have a turn 3 Fiora. So that's. But yeah, I think you'll see in this list a tech card I've started to see pop up: Emerald Awakener, which is the 2/2 lifesteal for 3, enlightened +4/+4. I think lifesteal minions in general are kind of getting valued higher as time goes by. I found decks are very good on offense and pretty bad on defense normally. So there's not a lot of blocking, and lifesteal kind of helps make up that racing difference, especially for a. I mean, I would consider this a control deck, even though it's a little unconventional, maybe in its method of control, right? Like it's like a Fiora control deck.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's a healthy way to look at it. I mean, you have 3 single combats. Your goal is to kill all of their creatures, be it in combat with pump spells such as Twin Disciplines or Riposte, or just blocking and Spirits Refuging if you win the trade, right? I mean, it is effectively a combo control deck because the goal is to combo off, right? You want to kill with Fiora. You have a hard time not killing with Fiora in this deck.
Yeah, I think in my experience, the only ever time I really lose this deck is like a standalone on a Kinku Lifeblade that races me, which can happen, obviously. Like it's a very powerful Ionia card, but for the most part, uh, I think you can pretty safely devote all your resources to trying to remove their Fiora when you play against this deck, because that is their primary win condition, and the deck's a lot worse when they don't have it in play.
That makes sense. Let's see if is there anything else. Heimer Control, that's a fun deck. We've talked about that on the podcast before. I mean, you have extensive experience with this. Do you want to talk about it?
Yes, this is not quite the list I was playing. I was playing the Noxus one when, again, at the Elusive Craze. I've started to see this one pop up more. This is a Filter Renzon Splash Ionia control deck for kind of more conventional control cards like Deny, and get Shadow Assassin, which is in every Ionia deck. But this is a true Heimerdinger win condition deck. Your whole game plan revolves around when your opponent finally taps out. Your goal is to play Heimerdinger because you know that the next turn you're going to generate so much value off of him that'll kind of carry you through to your next Heimerdinger. I think this deck's okay, probably appropriately rated at B tier currently.
I see Shadowflare here. That seems to be the most interesting card to me. How does this work in practice?
So I could tell you where this ends up in every single one of my Ionia Expedition decks. It works not that well. I don't know. It's okay, and I think the dream is they kind of have big guys that for some reason don't have evasion, or maybe just normal sized guys that don't have evasion, and you can Shadow Flare after you block with your Heimerdinger turrets because you can't afford to take this hit and actually have them die. My biggest problem with this card is that it explicitly says follower. Champions do not die to this card, and a lot of times your hard removal spells want to go towards some of these champions. Like it's not good to Shadow Flare on a Hecarim that's attacking you and then the Hecarim's still there to attack you next turn.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. For those of you who don't know, or just listening to the audio transcript, Shadow Flare is a fast spell that costs 6 mana, grant all battling followers ephemeral, so they will die after combat.
So there's definitely a reason it's only a 1-up here. Like the deck needs some board clear, which you lose from the Noxus Splash. I don't know. I'm not very high on that deck personally. I think the next deck has a lot more potential, and honestly, potentially might be rated this low. This next deck being the Ezreal Freljord combo deck. Some people call it Ezreal OTK.
This deck is very fun. Even when I'm losing, I'm a little frustrated, but I'm having so much fun watching the Mystic shot me.
Yeah, this deck's sweet. You try to level up your Ezreal by doing a lot of like freeze effects with Brittle Steel, Flash Freeze, Harsh Winds. Like Harsh Winds and Static Shock are great because they target 2 things, and then you have minions that are similar with Ice Veil Archer. Like your whole goal is to prevent them from killing you, and then with the combination of Ezreal, like a bunch of built up mana, and a lot of the mushroom cards from like Chump Wump and Clump of Wumps, you can 20-0 someone, sometimes at burst speed, like there's literally no interaction.
It's the Wump package. You can't do anything about the Wump package.
Yeah, Clump of Wump's definitely worse than his big brother Chump Wump, but this deck where they're going for the full OTK utilizes both. If you're looking for kind of like a true combo playstyle, this is the closest deck I've played that is like, it actually feels like a dedicated combo deck. Like there's other ones that some of the Fiora decks feel kind of that way, but this one is all in. They're only killing you with Ezreal.
So for those of you who don't know, OTK stands for one turn kill. The concept of this deck is it's entirely possible on a flipped, leveled up Ezreal, where he casts Mystic Shot automatically, right? That's his level up ability when you cast a spell, correct?
Yeah. He targets he deals 2 damage to their Nexus every time.
Right. Yeah. However that works. Yeah. 2 damage is being dealt to your Nexus. So the concept is you're casting a lot of efficiently costed, kind of at sometimes useless spells like the puffs. Yeah. And you're just dealing them 2 damage, right? So throughout the course of normal combat with your sentries, your Ice Veil Archers, your Clump of Wumps, right? Chump Wump is just a 4/4/4. It's very aggressively statted. You're probably going to connect at least once, maybe. Your Marksmans, right? Throughout the course of normal combat, maybe your opponent's at 16, so you only have to successfully cast 8 spells after your Ezreal flips, and you can very easily do that on 1 turn with everything costing 1 mana, 2 mana, even beams at 0 or beams at 1, right? We'll get you there. So yeah, that's kind of the Ezreal combo control style. It plays a lot of Freljord freeze effects, frostbite effects, which I'm not personally a fan of, but I understand that.
I have a bad news for you.
I understand the need in this deck, but I really don't like Frostbite as a mechanic. It reminds me of Turbo Fog in Magic the Gathering, which I was also not a fan of. But yeah, that's how this deck works. I think it's pretty neat. I think it's pretty fun. Watching Ezreal go off is if it happened to me more often where I was losing to it, I'd probably be annoyed. But it's so far and few in between that I have a lot of fun, win or lose, when I'm playing against it.
Now, do you think with some of these decks, like mostly just Piltover and Zon decks in general, do you think these are perhaps rated more low because people aren't playing them that well yet? Like, I feel like this deck has to be harder to play than the Mist Wraith deck I've been playing, where I play my guys and I look to see if they have creatures that can block. They never do, and then I attack them. Like, that's a pretty easy game plan.
So I think we don't know how they were rated.
Right.
So I don't know how to answer that question entirely, but I will say my guess is it has something to do with the play/win rate. Win rate would be a contribution of what you just asked, where are they being played well? And then play rate is, do people have the cards yet, right? We're only a couple weeks in. They're diametrically opposed to cards that begin in your collection. You have to reach out for them. I still don't have 3 Ezreals. It's one of the few champions that I'm missing that I would think about playing.
Right.
So it's probably a combination why they're not rated higher. Maybe they're just not that good. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible they're not built perfectly yet. Like I think this is a brand new card game, and maybe people haven't necessarily figured out what a optimal combo shell looks like, right?
Hmm.
Like this isn't a Hearthstone where it was not to necessarily demean them or anything, like a normal DCG where it's I go, you go. So like people have to figure out how to play combo decks in a game where your
You can't
opponent
interact with
actually
your
can't
opponent,
interact with you.
right?
So yeah, it's
Yeah,
just there's
yeah, it's definitely very interesting. I like where it's going. The next couple of decks are kind of old school decks that we've seen in the previous beta waves that we see now. One of these B tier decks I was actually excited to play until this week.
sneaky chariots.
Yeah, the Chariots deck I think conceptually is amazing. I like Zed, Hecarim, Shark Chariot. I think it's doing really cool things. It's a deck where you can play Shadow Fiend, which is pretty neat. You know, if
Yeah.
the problem is there's too many chump blockers in this game, and those cards don't have evasion.
Which is weird because I actually think I feel like the meta has kind of evolved. Like the meta has been evolving very rapidly, but not everyone's going to care and adhere to that. I actually think chump blockers are in a terrible place right now. Like the two best decks are fearsome decks and elusive decks, and your chump blockers are awful. But like there's going to be people that play their hapless aristocrats until the day they die, and you're not going to convince them otherwise.
Yeah, well, the spider shell still exists. They generate a lot of
Yeah,
chump blockers.
spiders is different.
Even if they're
mist
not,
wraiths do not.
yeah, sure, yeah, yeah. I don't know. It doesn't. They're not in a good spot. I don't know. This deck isn't very good, which is clearly why it's B tier. It just looks so fun. I have the Hecarims and the Zeds, and I have all the cards. Maybe I'll just play it for fun. Maybe it's better than I think it is. Who knows?
I mean, I'm a little surprised to see this is the list. I've personally never played against this configuration of elusive minions and Shark Chariot. Normally, when I play against Zed Hecarim, it is much more Shadow Isles based, and they're kind of living and dying by the Deathmark combo plays.
Mhm.
So maybe this is a kind of a more interesting list they decided to post, and I would still lean towards the death marks. I think that's the most appealing part of ephemeral decks, personally.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. The other two decks, you have your classic Jinx Draven deck.
So there's no chump bumps in here. I can tell you for sure that's a mistake. It's a built over deck. Play chump bump.
Yeah, it's a 4/4
no
for 4.
asked.
It's aggressively statted. I mean, I guess when your 4 power card costs 2, maybe you think you can skip it.
Nah, this card, like you think the mushroom clouds are bad because they are, but they synergize with like everything built over does for some reason. Or not
Like
even
his
some reason,
rummage.
like, that's just it's good with rummage. Like you have spinning axes where you don't always have good cards to discard it to. Super JJ streams this deck a lot, and he's playing Plaza Guardians. They synergize there.
His
Honestly,
his Jinx Raven deck is an actual control deck. It is not this discard aggro as it's labeled in Mobalytics.
What was funny is I was watching today, and there's multiple times where he would just play the buff cap cards, and they would just like take 2 over the course of the game, and so it was like you played a 4/4 for 4 that also dealt their Nexus 2 damage, and it made his Plaza Guardian cheaper. Like they just end up being better than you think, and I would definitely start with 3 chump bumps. Like that's where my deck list would start before even the Dravens.
Not at the Jinx and Dravens.
No, just right. I was scrolling down to 4 chump bump in the deck. We'll figure out where to go from there.
You also have to keep your curve in consideration. There isn't very many 4-drops in the deck, and maybe Jinx just has to be it. I don't know.
Cut the Jinx by the chump bump.
Okay. All right. And then last but not least, we have a B tier Zed Elites deck. This is an Elites deck. I'll agree with the rating. Elites isn't strong enough in this format, which is crazy to say because Elites is objectively strong. Battlesmith is a powerful card. Dawn Speakers is a powerful card. Back-to-back is a powerful card. And the creatures are all efficiently costed for their power and toughness.
Yeah.
Why isn't it better? You know, it's the meta. Like I've mentioned before, there are a lot of just blockers you can't get rid of. Evasion is key in this format, it appears. And interestingly enough, this deck is good on the defense. I've played a variant of Elites, And on the defense against the current meta, it's fine, right? Fearsome is really popular, and a lot of your creatures have 3 power.
Yeah, I was about to say, for what it's worth, I think this deck's actually probably is a B tier deck that has a good Mist Wraiths matchup,
Yep.
or at the very least, it's even.
Yeah, should we tell them? Should we tell them what we were playing? The Elites package?
You gotta show. I think the Zed package is bad. This card doesn't synergize with Elites, and Zed sucks. Like that's my hot take. Get him out of here. Get some Omen Hawks in, because Omen Hawks synergize with cards.
Everything.
Yeah.
Omen Hawk makes all of your Elites insane. It's doing what Battlesmith wants to do all the time, without having to play around removal and not attacking with your 2/2. And you know what else synergizes with Elites?
Yeah, do you want to talk about the keyword group that I believe appears on one card in Runeterra?
Yeah, so let's see if we can search cards here. Pack Mentality. Hopefully I spelled that right. Yep. So this card says, it's a 7 mana slow spell, and it says, give an ally and all other allies in its group +3/+3 and overwhelm this round. So what is group, Michael?
So group is something I found out in Expedition. Some cards have a tag at the top. In this deck, you'll notice a lot of them say Elite. That is the group they're from, and Pack Mentality will give all of your Elite creatures in play +3/+3 and overwhelm. Because I have never resolved that card and not killed my opponent in the Elites tech.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So, interestingly enough, it's probably the same. They're probably still both B tier decks. They're like 6 cards different, right? But the Overwhelm version, I mean, they were dead. If they didn't have Deny, they were dead every time I cast it. If they couldn't deal with it somehow, detain or something, right? There's obviously ways. But if you resolve that card and you have 3, maybe even 2, you're probably going to win that combat.
Yeah, I'd like to have 3 in my experience, but I think our version was also playing Relentless Pursuit.
Yeah.
If you only had 2, maybe those 2 together would kill them.
Yeah, we got a lot of wins that way.
I agree. I don't think the deck's good still, but
yeah,
it's probably more fun, and you don't have to play Zeds, which makes your deck better.
You really don't like Zed.
Yeah, that's not a good card right now.
As a Shadow Isle player, you kind of just Black Breath it anyway, right?
Yeah,
Black Spear. I apologize, Black Spear.
It's like I block with my 1/1 that Elise made, and I'm like trying to figure out why this guy wasted 3 mana, and then I Black Spear and move on with my life.
Sure. Okay.
Like maybe I even glimpse beyond that spider, draw 2 cards beforehand.
All right. Well, let's move on here. That is the Legends of Runeterra meta tier list brought to you by Mobalytics. Pretty good information. It's the only really hard data we have, so that's what we're going to go by, and I'm sure a lot of other players will also do the same.
Not me, Medina. Not me. I'm going by the Decky.com survey, where they asked pros if I'm going to blindly trust in my appeal to authority.
Okay, interesting. So that's what you are going to. That's what you're going to trust. Okay, so let's pull up this article. This was a really fun, hot article that came up, and Decky.com. Shout out to that website. They have written their article. At least I don't know if it's all their articles or if it's just this article, but they have it in both Japanese and English, which is pretty neat. Normally, you'd have to translate with a plugin, or if your Chrome is just good, or if you have if your web browser is just good enough to auto translate it. But this is an article. Strongest decks by master players. So this is a Japanese Runeterra community called Decky, and they asked 9 players the current 3 strongest decks that this is Japanese, right? So this English isn't well. They essentially what this boils down to is they asked 9 master players what the strongest decks are, and this is the results, right? So let's see if it matches what Mobalytics is saying. Yeah. Actually, but maybe before we continue, what do you think, in your opinion, the strongest meta deck is?
I mean, I believe it's the deck I've been playing. I think it's Mist Wraiths. Admittedly, it was in pretty low elo, but I've gone from Silver 3 to Gold 2, losing literally a singular game. I feel like in Runeterra, that's obviously some of this is going to be variance, but like you can lose games all the time because every game is so close, and the fact that my win rate's been so high is just like really impressed me with this deck. I haven't been able to duplicate that with anything else.
Okay.
What about you? What do you believe the current strongest deck is?
You know, I'm still gonna say it's some. So I'm gonna say it's one of two, right? And one of these is kind
of put it all on the line.
All right, all on the line.
The region combination and the deck. Sorry, obviously Ionia. What's your second region?
Well, yeah. So here's the thing. I'm not entirely. So I want to instinctively say some elusive deck. There's quite a different combination of decks out there that are leveraging elusive. I'm not sure which one I think is the strongest, but okay. So I can't say two, which is the rough part. Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna say some elusive package deck, right? Some probably Demacia and elusive for back to back. That's gonna be my opinion. And that's anecdotal. It's what I've played. It's what I've played against. It's what I lose against a lot. It's what I win with a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I'm only in Plat, so it's not saying much. And I did have the most success playing a Spider Noxious deck, which is kind of why I wanted that second option, you know?
Yeah, I figured that's where I was going.
Yeah, but if I had to choose,
on the line
yeah, I'm gonna say some elusive deck, and I don't know which one specifically.
Sure.
All right, so let's see how this article plays out. So number one is Miss Wraith, right? Everybody unanimously said Miss Wraith.
Yeah.
Okay. So next is Fiora. 6 out of 9 players said Fiora. 4 out of 9 players said specifically Fiora Karma, which is interesting. That's more of the combo. You know, you're 100% in on the combo deck in that version.
Yeah, it's got the kind of the Karma backup land.
Yep.
It might even be a little bit more controlling than the standalone Fiora deck.
Yeah. Yeah, the standalone Fiora deck can cast standalone on pretty much any creature and go to town.
Yeah.
2 out of 9 of them said standalone Fiora, which makes sense. So 6 votes for Fiora, which makes sense. I believe that. I don't know. Well, we'll just keep going down the list. I'm not sure. You know my opinions on Miss Wraith, so.
Sure. Okay.
Next is tied. Spider Aggro. I can see that. What is it tied with? Okay. Oh, interesting. Spider Aggro, Ezreal Heimer, both tied for third place.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a little bit what I was alluding to from the Mobalytics. I think Ezreal Heimer is a deck that hasn't been tuned as much, and it's felt extremely stressful to play every time I've played it. I wouldn't expect this to be a deck that people pick up very quickly, but you know, you get these pros who've played so many other card games, and maybe they pick up the play patterns faster. Maybe their decks are tuned faster. Like, they really like this deck.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, there's definitely more play in that deck. There's more decision trees that are important. I can definitely see why it would attract people. But this article is supposed to be the strongest that players submitted. So it's more interesting to me that they think it's one of the strongest, more than it's a good deck that we like to play. Right there, there's 4 people out of the 9 asked said this is one of the strongest decks in the meta right now.
Yeah, and they do break it down a little bit. 2 of them said specifically Ezreal Heimer control. My guess would be that is the Noxus versions that people were playing earlier this week.
Yeah.
Astrogation said the Frozen Ezreal OTK deck specifically, so that's a little bit less Heimerdinger.
True.
And Casanova said, which is interesting, I agree that he said this is a top 3 deck. He said probably some kind of Heimer deck. I don't even know what's in it. Like, he just thinks Heimerdinger is so good that it's like, I don't need to know what the other 37 cards are. Like, that's too much.
I mean, what he's doing on paper is insane, right? Heimerdinger is a very powerful 5-mana champion.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever had a Heimerdinger live through like an entire turn cycle? Like,
I have not, but my opponents have. Yeah, it's very hard. Yeah.
Like, he makes 8/8s for some reason. Your duplicate Heimerdingers turn into draw 3s with an 8/8 attached.
Are they progress days? Is that why?
Yeah, it's Heimerdinger's progress day.
That's fun. All right. Next is elusive. So I guess I was in the minority here. I'm not a Masters player. So, yeah, only 3 out of 9 players surveyed at the master level said Elusive was one of the best decks.
Yeah, I mean, I think I I've thought for a little bit that Elusive is still the kind of level 0 best deck in the game, but I think everyone is warping their decks around that fact, and I think this deck is probably getting targeted more than anything, like
Mm-hmm.
constantly, because you have to have a game plan with Elusives. Like with Fearsome, you have to change your deck a little, but really you should play 3 power guys to block. With Elusives, your removal has to be cheap and kind of deal with their guys well. Like you need challengers, you need to race them. Like everyone's making all these deck building choices with this in mind. I mean, the first Heimerdinger Ezreal deck I played was specifically splashing Noxus because like, we need good 3-mana spells because the 3-mana turret Heimerdinger makes is elusive. Like that's our
Yeah.
game plan,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, fair enough. So for clarity, Reddit user Nemuke1 submitted that article from Decky.com, and we'll also post the link to that in the description below in the video. So yeah, that was interesting. The Pro Survey, Mobalytics, they're both aligned on the meta shaping to be Mist Wraiths heavy.
notice no one said Dawn Spiders on that list.
That is an interesting takeaway. Yeah.
That kind of echoes our own personal experiences, but it might not necessarily echo the data.
Yeah.
But it's possibly like I do think in a lot of games certain decks are better at certain elos, and it's possible at the highest elos Dawn Spiders isn't cutting it right now.
I've never been impressed. I've never been impressed with any version of Dawn Spiders I've ever seen. That's just, and you know that. We've talked about this. I'm not a fan. I don't think it's good. I don't lose to it often. I tried playing it once when you were on it, and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period where every time we had to play against Dawn Spiders because it was like, I don't know, it just feels like the most average deck to me. I do think they're making improvements. They're playing Mist Wraiths, which are pretty good. We've seen they're playing Hecarim now, which is just a good card.
Yeah, this new version is a little more impressive, but I think that's heavily tilted because I think Hecarim is one of the most powerful cards in Runeterra. So I just think any deck that's playing it is a lot better than it used to be. And the minute I see a Dawn Speaker increase a Hecarim's power and toughness, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, I agree. The Demacia Splash is usually a little. It almost feels inconsequential. Like they play Vanguard Redeemer, or that could just be Shadow Assassin. It's like Dawn Speakers are usually fine, and back-to-back's obviously good. Purify's like niche useful. You're gonna hate yourself every time it's in your hand, and they have a champion you need to deal with. But
yeah, I understand the need for Purify, but I am incredibly frustrated with that card. I think objectively it's a well-designed, balanced card.
Yeah.
So my frustration is just that. It's just my frustration. And like I said, I do think it's a great card, but yeah, every time I need to deal with a champion, I'm just like livid. I'm staring at the card, trying to click it.
Typically an okay card, to be honest. Like people are playing Purify for like the Shadow Isles Mirror, and I look at it and I'm like, what are you actually purifying? Like it's really just Ladros, right? Because you're not purifying Hecarim. Rasa, you're not purifying. You could take Fearsome off one of their minions, I guess, but like literally you're playing 2 cards because you always need to have one when they have their 1 Ladros. I would almost rather just play like a second Ladros of my own and just be like, well, let's up the arms race. Like,
you might
gonna have mine.
You might know the answer to this. I'm not entirely sure. What happens if you purify a Rasa while the harvest is on?
He loses Fearsome, and then you lose your 2.
You still lose your 2. Okay.
Yeah. So
I assumed as much. I just wasn't entirely positive.
Yeah, I mean, I get that it's a good card sometimes, and there are people that have they're kind of playing with Curse Keeper versions of decks. Like they come and go sometimes where they're a little better, but I think in general, I don't think Purify's that good in this meta. Like, I don't know, just in my experience, I've found a lot of times it's just rotting in my hand as I die to a Hecarim. So
yeah, it makes sense. All right, and now we're going to talk about some of the data mining that some people have been discovering. So there was a article posted on outof.cards, and they kind of talk about the existing regions that they have found in the game through data mining techniques, and kind of an unknown region.
Yeah, like my personal guess is it looks Void-esque, but they had their own speculation. I think we'll probably be linking that. You can read it, but I think the bigger takeaway here for me was they have the Zon icon in the game, where you might actually see them split up Piltover and Zon into their respective regions.
Maybe. So this is interesting. As a person with a tech background, I think it's interesting how it's entirely possible. So they say that this has been data mining after searching through images in the client. It's entirely possible that these assets were left over from early versions of beta where maybe they weren't separated.
Which they do say in the article. Like,
okay.
They could go either way.
Yeah.
They're obviously not claiming to know anything definitively.
Yeah. I mean, this doesn't tell us much. It tells us that these assets exist, so they were thinking about it at some point. Doesn't really say what to expect out of that. It's just that those images were found and they exist. It's kind of exciting. If you wanted to look at it as as positively as possible, you could say that these are planned releases, which I wouldn't personally look at it that way. I mean, I'm hopeful for Shurima mainly because while I don't play League and I haven't in quite a while, I did play a lot of Renekton and I really like that champion. So I would like to see Shurima in a Renekton deck. But I think it could be fun to see Bilgewater upcoming. I think Nautilus would be Bilgewater. I think he's interesting lore wise.
Yeah, I think like I said in the last episode, I'm a League addict. Pretty much every time a champion comes out, as long as it's not like Sona, like Yumi, I'll be excited.
Okay. So, yeah. Bandle City would be cool. I'd like to see Rumble. I played a lot of Rumble.
Yeah, I think Rumble would be sweet. Not huge on Yordles for the most part. Like Tristan's fine. I don't know. I would be very excited. That's kind of the region that I've wanted the most.
Which region?
The Void.
Okay.
Cho'Gath or
Vel'Koz, Malzahar,
Kai'Sa, Kassadin, etc.
Yeah, that'd be.
It's a cool region. Not even necessarily the champions. I think they could do. Like, I was really impressed with some of the Shadow Isles artwork and some of these like other characters they made up, like Ladros and Rasa and stuff. Like, I think you could just have some really cool Void monsters and stuff.
Yeah. So interesting to note. Now, I didn't know this. I don't know much about the lore of League of Legends, but I didn't know the Void was just a part of like a continent.
Yeah, and part of the issue with League lore has been like retconned multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
So it is on their most up-to-date map, and I don't know if that's necessarily the Void or if it's more of like the gateway from Runeterra into the Void. I'd have to brush up on it, but for the most part, I believe the Void is kind of self-contained and it's hard to get in and out.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't know that. I mean, like I said, I don't know much about League of Legends or Runeterra, or from a lore perspective. For some reason, I assumed that the Void was just some kind of other plane of existence that maybe overlaid on the material plane, if you want to get into D&D speak. But yeah. I didn't know that it was, like you said, it could be a gateway. I'm not sure, but this picture makes it look like it's just close to Shurima, and it's just a place that I could walk to, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I know it was always kind of associated with Shurima to an extent. There was I believe a city called Acathia that was kind of the gateway to the Void, one of the earlier versions of League lore. I'm not sure if it's still up to date, but Malzahar has multiple quotes from his voice actor that references that, or that's kind of like where he was called to the Void, and he's the Void Prophet. So.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. We'll post links to this article on the video description below as well. Pretty cool. I mean, and don't hold your breath hoping that any of these will be like sequential, or that even we might not see any of these regions, right? Like Hearthstone didn't decide to add Death Knights, at least in the way that everybody thought they were. So maybe we don't get regions. Who knows?
Like, it'll never stop me from holding my breath for the Void.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna hold it. So. There's no way. There's no way they don't add regions. I'm putting like my word on the line here. Expect regions. Don't know when, but they're coming.
I thought that Death Knights would be a class. I was excited for
Still
monks,
holding my
and
breath for that.
they still holding your breath, even though
Still
they've
holding my
introduced
breath.
Death Knights not
Yeah,
as a
that's
separate class.
Like
Okay.
pseudo Death Knights,
Okay.
Death
Yeah.
Squires.
Sure. All right, and that's it for this week's episode of the Bad Mage Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and as always, be on the lookout for our videos every Monday at noon. Pay attention to the video links descriptions below. There will be all of the articles that we've talked about today, as well as the Discord information. And yeah, that's it. Have a good one.